In today's episode, Jason asks, can you describe a marketing initiative that illustrates the intersection of data and content? So, data is an ingredient, right? If you were baking a cake, data would be something very substantial like flour or sugar, right? It's a substantial part of any type of content marketing because you need to have information you don't need to have information in your content marketing, but it sure does help. When we think about content marketing, when we think about what we're trying to do, right, we are trying to persuade somebody. We're trying to put out a point of view, an opinion, a lens to look at something, and we have to support that point of view. And there are three things that you need for every piece of persuasive content, right? This goes way back to 2,500 years ago or more, in the time of Aristotle. Right? Ethos, pathos, and logos, which is ethos is authority, pathos is feeling or emotion, and logos is logic or fact. And those are sort of the three pillars of persuasion. And you need all three in order to be persuasive, in order to convince somebody to buy your product or to at least look at it, to support a certain point of view. And when you have all three and you have a good balance of all three, you do really, really well. Ethos, that authority, comes from who you are, your credentials, your reputation, things like that. Pathos comes from the emotions that you can invoke, and that is, in many cases, the language you use, the type of story that you tell. But logos are the facts, the logic, the data, if you will, that make up your argument. We know from neuroscience that people make decisions emotionally, but then they use data and fact and logic to rationalize their decision, to say, like, oh, this is really why I made this decision, not I really want that thing. And you see this all the time in people's crazy rationalizations for some of the decisions they make. So almost every marketing initiative that is persuasive in some fashion, from a content marketing perspective, uses data because you have to have that supporting information. So, real good example, we have been at Trust Insights keeping an eye on people's usage of TikTok, specifically search terms about, join TikTok, create a TikTok account, etc. And also, quit TikTok, delete TikTok, and keeping a sort of a running index of these two things and seeing how the ebbs and flows of people's searches dictate their interest in the platform, right? Their willingness to participate, and using that as a proxy to decide, is this something that marketers should invest in? And the answer thus far initially it was no. Now it's dip your toe in the water. And as we continue to see this data, and we see the changes in the data, we continue to see a growing case that you might want to try it out if your audience is there. So from a data perspective, being able to watch that index, if you will, and make decisions based on it is something that helps us produce content about it. To be able to say, this is something that is a known thing, this is something that is of interest, and you should do something about it. Now, for those people who have no interest in TikTok at all, they're just staunchly against it, they have an emotional block to it, the logic doesn't matter, right? The data doesn't matter. It's not for me, and that's fine. We're not trying to persuade those people. We're not trying to, really, in this particular case, we're not trying to persuade anyone. But for those who are avid fans of the platform, their emotion has driven a decision, and they will look at the data and say, this confirms what I've been saying. And for those who are on the fence, which is who we end up speaking most to in a lot of our content marketing, this is, oh, okay, maybe it's worth a try. So in this case, you have a decision being made with pathos, and then for those who are trying to rationalize whatever decision, they can look at the data, the logic, the fact, the logos, and confirm, deny, or go ahead with some kind of decision. From that perspective, in many ways, data gives you permission to make a decision. Right? Data gives you permission to make a decision because we know that we judge ourselves and we judge others on the rationality of their decisions, even if we know in our heart of hearts that almost all decisions are emotional. But when we deal with human qualities like altruism and enlightened self-interest, we judge people on whether it is they're making decisions purely for selfish reasons or they're at least trying to help others. So when you're using data in your content marketing, be thinking about, how do I give a stakeholder the permission to make a decision in favor of what it is you're trying to market? What information do they need to have to be able to point to it and justify the decision? Say, no, I made this rational decision, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I made this rational decision based on this information. And they feel better, and they feel like they have a rock to stand on. So that is the intersection of data and content. It is that 1/3 of decision-making as part of persuasion that we have to provide as marketers, because if we don't, we make it very hard for people to justify the decisions. Agreeing with somebody else's opinion is okay, but agreeing with somebody else's facts, for most people, in most circumstances, some politicians exempted, is how we insulate ourselves from liability, how we support our opinions, and how we convince others that we're acting in their interests. So that's really where I would say you should start thinking about how to use data in your content marketing. It's a good question. It's a complex question. If you have follow-up questions, please leave them in the comments box below. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and the newsletter. I'll talk to you soon. Want help solving your company's data analytics and digital marketing problems? Visit trustinsights.ai today and let us know how we can help you.